I first met Jimmy, and Jimmy, you've heard this story so many times. When you were 2 or 3, I think you were like 3, Kathy, your older sister, became a very good friend of mine, and I think it was Oakwood Camp that we became friendly. And I remember you as just a little guy, 3 or 4, running around, and I believe the house was on 63rd Street on the Kansas side. I may be wrong about that. Sharon, I didn't meet you until you and Jimmy were engaged. I remember it was at a party or something, and I met you there. Could have even been dinner at Oakwood. In fact, that's what I think it was.
I've known Jimmy since 6th grade, and we played a lot of stickball together and a lot of APBA, and I spent the night at his house a lot, and he spent the night at mine, and we've been really good friends ever since.
And I have known Jim longer than Sharon, but when we first got introduced to Sharon, I had a feeling that Jim's life was going to turn out great, and so it has.
I've played stickball with Paul, and we've been to Allison's wedding, and I've worked with Karen, and really felt very close to the entire family.
Jim, I think I met you probably when we were in high school. Maybe you may have still been in grade school, which is going on 50 years, 55 years, which puts me up there with the rest of the old folks in this group. And Sharon, I don't know whether I knew you in high school through Mary or whether it was only when we came back to Kansas City 35 years ago that I met you. It's been a long time.
Well, Sharon, I remember meeting you in Sophie Harper's kitchen in an attempt to learn to make schnecken. I have never made schnecken, but what did come out of that day in the kitchen is a long friendship. But what's so interesting is, although I've known you now since we met in June of 1974, I am one of your newer friends, which says a great deal about you and about Jim.
I can't tell you when we first met because I don't remember, but I do remember when Karen was 3 years old and she was in my class at Beth Shalom. That goes back a few years. I can remember when I worked at Compliments for a very long time and got to see Sharon, you, all the time.
I met Jim in either 1955 or 56 when one of my very best friends fell in love with his sister, Kathy, and from that point on, we paid many visits to the Greenwood house, primarily to see Kathy, however, not Jim, in spite of how attractive and delightful he was as a child.
I didn't hear that about him.
You probably...
Well, when did you hear about Sharon, or meet Sharon?
I heard about Sharon when I was, I think, still in college, and I heard that she was a lovely, very nice Jewish girl of the utmost moral standing, and those were the reasons that I never went out with her, as a matter of fact. Those were the disqualifiers. She was both
Sharon
nice
was a lucky
and
girl then and now.
Sharon, we go back so far. I think both you and I remember vividly your mother, Roz, dropping you off with your sisters at Flossie's, who lived next door to us, and you and I playing together as children. And that was the beginning of a really long and wonderful friendship.
When did I first meet him?
You were young.
Pem Day. And that's, and we made it through high school together, and then we made it on a 6-week trip.
Can you believe that?
With Dr. I Don't Care, we won't use a name. And Jimmy wanted to sleep until noon. I wanted to go at 4 in the morning, and there was a third person involved. And his comment was, as a tiebreaker, I don't care. I've never liked threes since then. That was one of the very, very first memories. We had a great trip out west.
And I met Sharon in high school, wow, early. I guess it was 8th grade when we were Fine Lambs. And I was, I'm a little younger. And she was in the class that would have been, actually, I think my pledge mother might have been Phyllis. I don't remember. Anyway, known them forever and happy to have.
I don't remember exactly the first meeting, but I do know that Sharon was responsible for our meeting. She was taking water exercise from my mother at Annette Block's pool, and the topic came up of if anybody knew any cute Jewish guys for her daughter to go out with, and Sharon volunteered you, and I'm very glad she did, because 24 years later, we like what you arranged.
I like that too.
How about you?
Well, of course, I remember Sharon as my big sister. We got off to a little auspicious start, but I think we've made up a lot of ground since then.
Happy birthday to both Jimmy and Sharon. I've known both of you longer than I can almost remember. Sharon, we were sorority sisters in those bad, evil sororities in high school. Jimmy, I don't even remember how long I've known you or where I met you.
In my mommy's tummy.
Anybody else?
I met him first at their at a Thanksgiving.
All right, Thanksgiving.
Because they always host Thanksgiving.
Well, Stevie was out of town, and I was at a party at Mary and Steve D's in the mid to late 1970s after we moved to Kansas City. And I met Sharon initially, and of course she was charming as she always is. And then I went outside by the pool, and I was introduced to Jimmy, and Jimmy said to me in his typical manner, "Why are you here?"
And of course, Jeff was thinking, "Why are you here?"
And that was a good introduction to Sharon and Jimmy.
I met Sharon 60 years ago when my family moved 2 doors down from the Ginsburgs in Village Green. Jimmy and I met when we were 15 years old, a mere 50 years ago. Betty met you both when we visited Kansas City in the summer of 1974.
I remember.
Good. It shows that the memory is not lapsed yet.
Well, we met Sharon at Michigan. Good old Ann Arbor town.
And I met Jimmy in Kansas City, and at that time I knew he was the one.
And I met Jimmy in Los Angeles. They were on their way to Hawaii for their honeymoon.